Welcome to the Red State Weekly Briefing. This is your host, Aaron Gardner. Once again, I am here with our co-host, Thomas LeDuc, this week from FTR Radio. Thomas, go ahead and say hi real quick.
Hi.
Thomas is the only one who's with us today. Caleb is absentee. I'm not quite sure what's going on with him. We did plan to have on a special guest, Kelly Maher from Colorado, on to discuss some of the happenings in Colorado governor's race. But unfortunately, she is having an emergency with some of her puppy dogs. She has a puppy dog who is pregnant and had to take it in for a C-section. So we wish Kelly and her puppies the best and hope for a good turnout there. Let me just go ahead and jump right into it this week. We have, first off, your top 10 Red State articles of the week. Number one article of the week was on the Redskins getting their trademark yanked by the White House. A couple other posts that I want to highlight are the governor's race in Colorado. We have Hickenlooper speaking to sheriffs who he refused to listen to during gun control debates, now going and apologizing to them. We have Obama's missing 18 minutes of tape. The basic idea of this one is the equivalent of the IRS emails that are now missing, being the equivalent to the 7.5 or whatever 18.5 minutes of missing tape from the Nixon administration. Also, we had the Democrats celebrating Flag Day this week, but using a flag that is not our country's flag. So that was an interesting catch by Caleb, which he was here to talk about today. A couple other things that we have going on in that top 10 list is we have the back-scratching politics in Mississippi, which we'll get into later as we talk more about the Mississippi Senate race and the primary that's going to be decided on Tuesday in the runoff election between Thad Cochran and Chris McDaniel. Last thing we have in our top 10 is Georgia Congressman Tom Graves. And he's basically embracing his role as the Judas leadership sacrificial goat. So those are the top 10. You should go and check out those on Red State this weekend or tomorrow morning if you haven't already. And we'll have more content up tomorrow. Looking forward to the new week. So let's go ahead and go towards the Colorado stuff. This is something I had to focus on this week. I was working with Kelly Maher to get footage of a meeting between the governor of Colorado, John Hickenlooper, and the Colorado sheriffs. Just to give you a little bit of backstory, in 2013, we had a bitter debate over gun control here in Colorado. We had the progressives who were in charge and held on to all three, the legislature and also the governor's mansion. They had complete and total control, and they decided that they were going to push progressive measures of gun control. One of these was a magazine capacity ban, which banned all magazines that could hold a capacity of greater than 15 rounds. Another one was an expanded background check bill, which basically took your normal background checks that we have right now and applied it to every single sale of every single gun, even if it's a private sale between two individuals and they're not at a gun show or whatever. It's a requirement that makes it much more difficult for people to buy and sell guns without having a federal firearms license. So with that as the background, during that debate, the sheriffs actually came out against all these gun control measures, specifically the mag ban and the background check legislation. They requested multiple times to sit down with the governor. The governor did not have time. In addition to the governor not having time, the governor apparently was completely unaware that they were trying to get in touch with him. And they even went before the legislature and testified multiple times on multiple issues, and still the governor had no clue, apparently. This is what we learned this last week when he went and apologized to the governor or to the sheriffs at a meeting in Aspen, which they hold annually. While he was there, he was clearly exasperated with the issue. He went through and stated a bunch of different things about if they had the correct statistics and had done the research properly up front, they may not have signed these pieces of legislation. He also admitted that the only reason that they signed the magazine capacity ban was because a staffer had promised that if it got through the legislature, the governor would sign it. He noted that they didn't expect it to actually get through the legislature. Now, to me, this is absolutely irresponsible. It's not governing. It's being a puppet. It's not standing up for one side or the other. There's no principle involved here. It's just going along to get along. Leduc, let me go ahead and bring you into the conversation here a little bit on these magazine capacity, gun laws, and gun control, and all the restrictions that we've had since 2013, and now this apology coming from Governor Hickenlooper. What do you think the general feeling is when we have politicians who do these things? They admit that they don't know what they're doing in the process, and then they come back and apologize and expect everything to be right. How would you handle that?
Probably, if it wasn't so serious, probably just start laughing. You're telling me that a staffer promised that this was going to get done, and the governor felt obliged to honor the staffer's word rather than fire his ass?
That's correct. That's correct. He actually, and this isn't the first time Governor Hickenlooper has blamed signing legislation or blamed other things that he's done on staffers, or just the general idea that his job as a governor is to go along and get along, not to cause any ripples, not to make anybody mad. And he actually says in the recording that if he had known that this was going to be so divisive, he probably wouldn't have gone through with it, which gives him some amount of judgment, but obviously he has no foresight.
Now, the last time you checked, because you live out in Colorado, correct, Aaron?
Correct.
Last time that you checked, is this staffer the governor?
No, the staffer is not the governor, and it's an amazing thing. No, he's not the governor. It's an amazing thing. Yeah, and we see this with the president as well. They managed to get away with being in charge, but never having any responsibility. And I think Hickenlooper is trying to do the same thing that Obama has successfully done for 6 years now. But I think it's going to fall. The wheels are going to fall off much quicker for Hickenlooper than they did for Obama. Hickenlooper is not quite as charismatic of a man, to say the least.
Now is he up for re-election this year?
Yes, Governor Hickenlooper is up for re-election this year, and he's never actually stood up in a two-way fight for an election. Even going back to when he was elected the mayor of Denver, he actually went up in a I forget how many different people, but it was 3 or 4 different people who were in that election who he went up against, and he won by plurality, if I remember correctly. Now in 2010, we had an epic meltdown in the Colorado GOP with our candidate. Well, a lot of stuff happened in 2010 with the GOP candidates for governor. Eventually, what ended up happening is you had Tom Tancredo come in as an outside independent run, so we had a 3-way split race between the Republican, Tom Tancredo, and Governor Hickenlooper. Governor Hickenlooper was able to exploit that and managed to come out on top in that 3-way race once again. So now this time around, our primary is this coming Tuesday. And we have 4 different candidates who are actually running for governor on the Republican side. You have Tom Tancredo, who we all know, Scott Gessler, who is the Secretary of State here in Colorado. We have Bob Beaupre, who's the former congressman. And then we also have a guy named Mike Kopp. Now, Mike Kopp and Scott Gessler, they're both generally good people, generally good Republicans, but they've got no traction. So right now it's really a race between Tancredo and Bob Beaupre to go up against Governor Hickenlooper. It's kind of an interesting dynamic here because a lot of people like Tancredo because he's very, very much into the liberty aspects. Right. But a lot of people are afraid that his rhetoric over the years with immigration will cause the wedge issues that we have against Hickenlooper and the Democrats to fade away, and instead the issue of immigration will take over, which becomes a wedge issue on our side.
Well, you know, I wanted to go real quick back to the Hickenlooper fellow, and that's a hell of a name. And I'm not really, judging, because here in Michigan I have a Republican by the name of Governor Snyder who's probably to the left of your governor, so I can't really, I'm not going to bitch that much about that. But I find it interesting that now he goes, you mentioned about him going to the sheriffs and having this meeting going, God, I didn't know this would be such a divisive issue. Oh, you didn't know that basically if you were going to pass this, and I don't know if it was directly related to this or some other legislation, that you had one of the largest ammunition manufacturers decide to leave your state?
Right.
You didn't know that if you were going to be passing these type of bills and this type of legislation, that there was going to be a problem, and you instead had a staffer go out and make a promise that you felt obligated to keep? I mean, do we really have to have spine transplants for all of these people who had enough guts to put their name on a ballot and put their trust in the voters to elect them, but then all of a sudden when it comes to actually legislating and they get some pushback, I read it in the paper. I didn't know that you guys were upset about this. How could I have... This is so... My staffer promised that we would do this. I mean, what the blip in hell, man? I understand that men today have been pretty much degraded to the point that they have to act like women, but for Christ's sake, man, I mean, don't blame a staffer for this. Man up, go to the sheriffs and tell them why you thought it was a good piece of legislation. They won't shoot you, but then again, they may not vote for you, and now you're just trying to straddle the fence. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, he should take a stand, and he should be on either one side or the other on these issues. But Hickenlooper, that's not what he does. He is very much the guy who likes to portray himself as in the middle. And before last year, actually, he was considered like the reasonable man in the room. Even going back to when he decided to run for governor, he wasn't sure what side of going back to governor, he wasn't sure what side of the aisle he was going to run on. He wasn't sure if he was going to be a Republican or a Democrat. So he is really a wish-washy guy. And that's probably why he was a great beer brewer and bartender, and great at having little communal societies that wrap around a bar, but isn't really a leader. So we now have the brewer in chief here running our show in Colorado, and it's really sad. He likes to act like he's all friends with these sheriffs, and he even in one point of exasperation, he actually said, how many apologies do you want from me? And he said, what the F, in that moment. So a lot of the sheriffs actually ended up laughing. But what's funny is that Hickenlooper, he's this type of guy who thinks that they're laughing with him rather than laughing at him. And I think it's important for people to understand that the sheriffs are definitely laughing at him. One of the stats that he actually brought up about the magazine capacity law was that he didn't realize that over 300,000 of these magazines were already here in Colorado. And he went on to note to the sheriffs that he's not sure how they're even going to be able to tell the difference between the old banned ones and the new ones that may come into the state. That is an absolutely amazing thing for him to be unaware of when that was the key point of debate. One of the key points of debate in this legislation when it was before the legislature and being debated.
His staffer didn't tell him. Honestly, the staffer that's going around making promises that the governor feels obligated to keep. I mean, honestly, whoever wins in the GOP primary on Tuesday, the ad I would be running is get rid of Governor Hickenlooper and his staffer who's actually running the state. I mean, honestly. How can you even use that as a defense? That is moronic. But then again, like you said, you talked about he didn't know whether or not he was going to run as a Republican or Democrat. I mean, my God, that sounds like Snyder out here in Michigan. And it is amazing. The only people, it seems right now, in elective office that actually have a spine and are willing to tell you what they think are generally the Democrats. At least in my opinion. Now, I know he's a Democrat out there, so I mean this is kind of flying in the face of what I'm saying, but it really just does seem today that the Dems at least will, they'll look at you and tell you kind of what they're going to do, and the Republicans will kind of tell you what they're going to do, but then they, we want to get along with everybody, and it's driving me nuts.
Oh yeah, I definitely think you're right there, and there's other things to consider also. The governor actually. In this video, he actually lied to the sheriffs as well. He claimed that he had never spoken to New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg before while the laws were being debated in the legislature. And we actually had a great reporter here in Colorado, a guy named Todd Shepard, who works at the Independence Institute, which you should definitely check out their website if you've never gone there and you're in Colorado. You should definitely check out the Independence Institute. Todd Shepard did a great job. He used the Colorado Open Records Act to request the phone calls from the governor's office to his individual line, his private line, and his business line. And he actually showed multiple phone calls during the time of the gun control debate between the governor and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who of course is now the director. Has put his money behind Everytown and Mayors Against Illegal Guns and whatever Moms Demand Action, whatever rebranding they're calling themselves this week. It all goes back to Mayor Bloomberg, and they're directly connected in here to Colorado. And so, the real question you want to ask is, was it actually a staffer? Or is he just calling Mayor Bloomberg a staffer? That's the real question I would like to have answered.
I don't think Mike's been called a staffer with anything in quite a while. But you know what? He's such an idea. At least I'll give Bloomberg this much credit. You know what he believes. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Totally fraudulent in his logic to how he got there, but you know what he believes, and he's willing to put his money behind it. And Harry Reid's never going to go to the floor of the Senate and call him one of the most evil men in history because of it.
Right, that's true. Just one real quick update. I want you to know I just got a text message from Caleb Howe, who is supposed to be with us tonight. He says that he's lost, and he's at an unknown farm, and he's not kidding. So if anybody sees a strange-looking man wearing a trucker hat and a Three Wolf Moon T-shirt at your farm, that's our friend Caleb Howe. Send him, call your local police station and make sure he gets home safely.
Just give him raw steak; he'll be fine.
Yeah, but if you feed him, he'll come back. So
he'll come back and visit. But yeah, just to make sure that he doesn't starve out there, just give him raw steak and he'll be fine.
Well, what's funny to me is he's out there, and obviously he has his phone because he texted me, and yet he can't figure out how to use the GPS to find out where he is. So,
I'm not going to rag on him too badly on that because I just learned how to use my GPS like 2 years ago.
Yeah, but you're like 78, aren't you? You're like Methuselah age, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I eventually learned how to do it. So don't worry, kid. You'll be there one day.
Oh, I know. Well, on that note, let's go ahead and transition away from Colorado here for a little bit, and let's talk about some of the other things that are going on in the world this week. So coming up here next Tuesday, we have both the primary elections here in Colorado, but we also have primary elections in Mississippi, the runoff election between Senator Thad Cochran, the incumbent, been in office for something like 36 years as a senator. And then we have State Senator Chris McDaniel, who has been a Tea Party insurgent. He's been given a message of economic populism and a return to our roots, traditional America. He's doing rather well. He's leading by, I believe, somewhere around like 6 points in the latest poll that has been dropped this weekend going into the primary runoff election. Now, there's been some shenanigans and some hijinks, so we can't really tell for sure what the electorate is going to look like when it comes out on Tuesday night. We have reports that Cochran has been trying to go out and urge Democrats who didn't vote on June 3rd to come out and vote in the runoff election, and we've heard reports also that he's basically been using old Democrat machine guys to go out and basically buy votes by giving out a little walking around money, as they used to call it. So this is an issue, and then we also have a couple other things that happened. As I mentioned in the top 10 list on the RedState weekly briefing from RedState, we have Brett Favre basically doing an ad for Cochran, and right before Haley Barbour, who is a big Cochran supporter, left office, he pardoned Brett Favre. I believe it was his brother. So it looks like a little bit of back scratching going on there. And, honestly, a friend on Twitter made a good point. If you're really wanting to be the guy who thinks that, hey, it's Senator Ted Cruz, it's not time for him to hang it up yet, do you really want Brett Favre to be the guy out there making that message? I'm just saying, he's retired more times than Michael Jordan, and he's weaker on the field than Thad Cochran. I don't really know if you want that guy out there anymore.
Oh, look at that. That was a nice little analogy there. Now, Brett's had more concussions than Bill Clinton's had 26-year-old interns. So,
hey, you know what, though? I bet you Brett Favre knows that the Cantor lost, though, and that's something that Cochran couldn't pull out of his cobwebbed head.
Nope, I'm pretty sure that when he heard Cantor lost, he thought that he lost his cantaloupe. So, Brett, Brett, God love him. He was a great football player back in the day, but I mean, what does he know? I mean, does he live in Mississippi? You know,
I think he's from there originally.
I think he went to college there. I'm not exactly sure, but and not saying I don't live in Mississippi. So I mean, basically, I've been following this and asking questions. But you know, you come out and you have a former quarterback who I'm sure is beloved, and yeah, you know, he was in my division up here against the Lions, and we used to like kicking his butt when they used to come in here to the Silverdome. I won't go into all that, but that's cute. Isn't that cute? I find it adorable.
Yeah.
I'm too adorable. I mean, Thad Cochran doesn't know who he is.
Thad Cochran doesn't know who he is.
No, Thad, and that's no disrespect to people who are aged. My mom just turned 72. God willing, thank you. I mean, you get old, you forget stuff, and when you're going out and talking about that you did things to farm animals, okay, when you have trouble remembering that you just spoke to a reporter 30 minutes prior and go up and reintroduce yourself. Look, being a senator is not an easy job. There are people who are in their 70s, like John McCain, that handle it. That's all they get up for. Thad Cochran, he could probably be getting up on a fishing boat, and it wouldn't make any difference to him right now. And
well, I think you.
From what I've seen, he's not making the case that he should be there for another 6 years.
No, I think you're right, and I think you're making a good point, because even before this whole primary and McDaniel and everything came up, Thad Cochran wasn't sure he wanted to even run again this cycle, and now we're hearing reports that he may not even serve out the entire time in the Senate if he were to win, which he's not going to win. I don't think he's going to win at this point.
You've got a long. I mean, it's a long time between whatever. I mean, it's a long time between now and Tuesday, and then Tuesday in the general, but. You know what? We've talked about this before, but the underlying thing that absolutely drives me nuts is that somehow, because this person has been an elected official, they should be an elected official for eternity. And that somehow normal thinking people who switch jobs in a lifetime now 12, 13, 14 times maybe, that we're just supposed to salute and say whatever. And here in Michigan, once again, Justin Amash, sophomore, he's being challenged, and I think he should. I think everybody should be challenged as often as possible, because that seat's not yours. You're there representing the people, and I know that's kind of just rhetoric for some, but that Thad Cochran is being challenged and he's doing as poorly as he is with a friendly, I don't know if that really translates well to doing the job that you need to do in Washington, D.C., and I'm glad it looks like McDaniel is taking this fight to him and winning it.
Yeah, I'm certainly happy as well. And, the thing is people got to understand also that Thad Cochran, he was never a conservative. He was never on the side of the Reagan movement. He was one of the guys who actively was against him in the primaries way back in the 80s and in 79. So it's not as if Cochran was some conservative stalwart in the Senate who gradually turned into a moderate. He was always a moderate. Any conservative credentials he had were nothing more than a veneer painted on by people like the ACU, who create a scoring system that basically makes it to where every single Republican out there is an 80% conservative, and that's just not the truth. You can see better scores out there on Heritage Action in their scorecard. So that's something to consider as well. Now, one last thing I want to note on this Cochran runoff and the vote buying that's going on down there, and I can't necessarily confirm everything that's in this, but there have been reports that some of the people who are involved in the vote buying are old Democrat machine hacks who happen to have been KKK members back in the day. So that's something that is troubling, and I hope that the media, who has journalists out there who are able to actually dive into a story and find real information on the background of these people, I hope they'll actually take note and do this. And remember that it's not the Tea Party who's engaging in this sort of stuff. It's the moderates. It's people who are old school machine control politicians, not liberty seekers.
No, I tell you what, and I understand your feeling behind that, but it'll never happen. And the reason why it'll never happen is because all of a sudden it'll rip off an exposed old wound that a lot of people don't realize, in the media definitely, the ones that are old enough now, is that the Democratic Party was quite comfortable with the KKK. The Democratic Party was an arm of the KKK after the Civil War, leading right up into the Civil Rights Act. And it was the Republicans who basically got the Civil Rights Act. Lyndon Johnson, he knew he couldn't twist Democrat arms on that. So for them to go and expose that now, you'd be exposing the underbelly of the Democratic Party and their whole ideology, that people should not be judged on who they are, but what they were born into. Because, of course, you're helpless. And they'll never expose. And Thad, you know, being that he's been around for as long as he's been around longer than me, actually. Yeah, he knows what levers to hit. And quite frankly, if this report's true that was in RedState, it just shows that how absolutely desperate he is, and that he knows he's in trouble, and that he cannot once again make the case to his fellow Republicans in his home state that he's been there forever and a day, that he needs to be sent back.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And yesterday I was listening to Larry Kudlow. You know, he has his radio show on the weekends, and he had Robert Costa come on. And Robert Costa is actually down there in Mississippi following the campaign and reporting on it as we speak. But one of the things that he mentioned was that he was, and this was, of course, like 9 o'clock in the morning my time, so probably 11 o'clock in Mississippi time or something like that. He was there with the senator, and he said that there were no other reporters there. He's been with him for the last 4 days, and he's been the only reporter who's been with him. That tells you something right there as well. If the reporters aren't out there with the campaign, it's pretty obvious that's not where the enthusiasm and excitement is, because that's where the reporters go. It's where the enthusiasm and excitement is. And obviously, I think that's on McDaniel's side right now.
Yeah, I was watching the feed earlier today from the Tea Party Express stops, and they have State Senator McDaniel with them, and it looked like, I mean, it's always hard to tell when you don't have a full camera view or you're there, but it looked like that at each one of those stops they were probably getting anywhere between 100 to 300 people. And, I mean, those are good. I mean, from what I understand, the weather's hot, sticky, humid down there, which is, you know, standard fare for this time of year in Mississippi, and you're getting people to show up for these things, and they're, you know, thunderstorms breaking out really quick and then dissipating, but people showing up for these things to show support and listen to him talk. That sounds exactly what you're saying there, that the enthusiasm is with him, and looks like on Tuesday he'll pull this out.
Well, I hope so. I'll definitely be watching the polls on Tuesday. Actually,
and Aaron, I should mention, if I can, that on Wednesday morning on my show you'll be doing a wrap up on all that.
I will. I'll be coming on your show on Wednesday morning, and we'll be talking about all the different races, the ones here in Colorado, the ones in Mississippi, and a couple different primaries from Tuesday that will be out there and decided at that point. So we'll definitely have a good time doing that. I also want to note this year I'm actually working as an elections judge. So on Tuesday night I'm going to be working in the El Paso County, Colorado Elections Department, watching the vote be counted and be verified. So that'll be an interesting thing, and I'll hope to have a few stories to tell the next morning as we discuss the primary results.
So you'll be the person judging whether or not the hanging Chad is hanging in the right direction.
Well, you know, we actually don't have any Chads anymore here in Colorado. Yeah. But we have our own issues. We have a completely 100% all mail-in vote. And this is our first statewide primary election where that is in place. The new law just took place last year. It was Law 1303, and it changed how everything works in our elections. So this is going to be an interesting time. So far, I can't really talk about anything. I took an oath not to talk about anything until after the election's over as an elections judge. But
right.
So far, there have been interesting challenges that have been needed to be overcome. But I would say that the El Paso County Elections Division has done a stellar job and has a very good system in place in order to verify that the vote is accurate and that everybody who has the right to vote gets a chance to vote. So I do want to put that out there. I'm actually really impressed with the El Paso County Elections Department.
As long as they don't emulate Cook County, Illinois, 1960, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right on that point. El Paso County is a relatively conservative area, so we have that to our advantage. So let's move away from election politics here for a minute. Let's talk a little bit about national security and what's going on in world events right now. So we have ISIS, the Islamic army that is basically taking over Iraq at this point. That's basically a Sunni-led militia and terrorist group that some people are saying, ooh, they're even too extreme for Al Qaeda. They're not too extreme for Al Qaeda. They're just another branch, another branding, and another portion of Al Qaeda and that philosophy, that ideology of government and oppression that is spreading across the Middle East.
Caleb had a really great line on that last week, if you remember. He said it's still a Slurpee at 7-Eleven. It's just a different flavor.
Right, exactly. It's still a Slurpee at 7-Eleven. But, this week we've heard a lot about the advance of ISIS into Baghdad, and we've heard about the different areas in Iraq that are falling. We've heard that our government has reached out to Iran in order to assist us in this because it's a sectarian battle between Shia and Sunni, and we've had Iran come back and say, forget you, we're not going to do it, we're not going to help you. And so now we have this environment where we've literally created a actual civil sectarian war because we've withdrawn from a country that we went in and had war in. Now, you can agree or disagree with the reasons why we went into Iraq in the first place. There was 22, I believe, different reasons why we invaded Iraq. One of those was weapons of mass destruction. The other 22 or the other 21 were equally valid reasons to go in. We now have people today who were scared to stand by their convictions in 2003 and 2004 and 2005 and 2006, saying that Iraq is a real threat to our national security. Now, they would never say this before when Bush was in office and when Bush was doing the things that needed to be done to isolate that threat. But now that Obama has retreated from the battlefield, taking all of our soldiers out of the way, and has basically given up every other country in the Middle East to new dictators and terrorists, now they're saying that this is an existential threat to the United States and that we need to do something about it. So, Leduc, what, barring a full-scale reinvasion of Iraq, can we do to make this right?
Man, that is the $5 million question, and it's a really damn good question. Yeah, rehashing what was done in the past is useful for historical context, but for what's actually on the ground right now, it's tough because you served, and if there wasn't a mission, if there wasn't a clear mission, okay, yeah, this has left a vacuum and everything and such, but I wouldn't want our guys sitting there with targets on their backs if there wasn't a clear mission. And I think wherever you stand on this administration doesn't have a clear view of our role, the United States role in the world. I mean, the closest thing to a role is that basically we shouldn't be involved in the majority of things because we're the cause of the problems, not actually the solution. But going forward with this, because this is a cluster and a quarter, I honestly don't know. I mean, I'm on one of these lists that you're on, and there's been a raging debate about this. And I find myself agreeing with a little bit of what everybody is saying because unless we have a clear view of what we want to do, putting our guys and women at risk at all, it is. I don't want to do it. I don't know if you just saw over the weekend, a couple 19-year-old kids in Afghanistan, gone. Okay, and you sit there and go, wait a minute, they're a year out of high school. All right, what are we doing? I don't want to put people at risk unless we have a clear vision of what we're supposed to do. You can argue with what President Bush did all you want. I understood what he was trying to do. There was a clear vision there. And right now it seems like the President of the United States, my president, opened up the paper and said, "Oh, look at that! Iraq's in turmoil. What do we do?" I mean, it's ridiculous, and I honestly have no idea even proposing anything for this administration because I think they're so inept and they just don't have a worldview other than generally it's our fault. So I don't know really what we can do, quite honestly.
Well, I think you're right to an extent. I don't think there's a whole lot we can do at this point. I think obviously we made mistakes by moving out as we did. We made mistakes by announcing that we were going to do those things. And we've made it much more difficult, no matter what the task is. We've made it more difficult at this point. Now, as far as I'm concerned, as someone who served in the military, as someone who lost friends in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places across the world that a lot of people don't even realize, it pisses me off. It pisses me off that we're here. It pisses me off that my friends who died over there left it better off than they received it. And have now seen it trashed, or haven't seen it trashed, depending on your beliefs. But it upsets me. It upsets me a great deal. I don't know what we can do at this point. I'm not a big fan of arming groups one against another because, honestly, you lose control of the weapons, you lose control of the people, and you end up in a worse place than you were before. So my honest opinion is that if the only real way to go back and do this is to do it full-scale, World War II style, take over the place, Marshall Plan it out, and stay there until democracy has become a part of the people's psyche. And that's the only way it can be done. And unfortunately, I don't think our country has the soul to do that anymore in the world.
I would disagree with you there. If the American people, if it's explained to them, okay, that inherently this is the right thing to do, they will get behind it. But tell me right now, who we know the presidents. Let's just throw that out the window. Who could make that case right now? And I don't know of anybody. I don't know of anybody that can make that case.
I don't know of anybody who could make the case right now. I mean, I don't think we have a world leader who can rally international opinion at this point. That role is usually filled by an American president, and unfortunately, we have an American resident, not an American president right now. Which I know it's cliche to say that, but it's true. He's
on a T-shirt because I want that on a T-shirt.
It should be on a T-shirt for sure. But and it's true. I don't mean to be disrespectful to the president or the office of the president. I just wish the person who is now the president would quit being disrespectful of the office of the president.
There's no game plan. I understand the people, and I can't fully understand because I never wore the uniform. I understand people that have the view that you just said about the guys who were over there that gave their lives doing this. The problem that I have, though, is I don't have, if it were explained and lined up, and I think the closest you could come to anybody doing that right now is John McCain when he's sensible, basically laying something out and saying, this is why we need to do X. I may not agree with it all, but he's probably the closest to saying that we have to go back there and correct what happened. I understand that argument, but are we going, at what point are we going to put more guys, 18-year-olds?
Well, before you even finish that question, let me just answer it and say that I think it's the wrong question to ask. I think the question that we need to be asking ourselves is when are we going to wake up and stop putting our future at risk? When are we going to understand that the ideological struggle that we're in with radical Islam, it's going to be a long war. As Bush said, it's not going to be something that we can go in and fix. This is a long ideological struggle that I don't think will ever be finished until the rapture comes and we all, part our separate ways and the division is complete. So let me just throw that out there, and let me also put out there that as I was saying, we don't have any leaders. We are a rudderless ship when it comes to foreign policy. Now, I don't mean that just with Obama in charge. I don't mean that just as a nation. I mean that as the Republican Party also. We don't have foreign policy. We are no longer. We've taken the three legs of the Reagan stool: the domestic policy, the foreign policy, and
economics.
in economics, and we've broken those all to bits, and we've stood around and said, why can't we do this anymore? And it's because we have no real focus. We have no real objectives. We need people like Mike Lee, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio. We need these guys to all sit down together and hash out a real foreign policy that conservatives can rally around, so we can get somebody in office in 2016 who actually has a real vision for the nation. Now, honestly, I'll say in 2012, the person who had the best vision was Rick Perry. And unfortunately, he wasn't up to the task to run for president that cycle. But when you look over the record the last 2.5 years, you can basically read from Rick Perry's playbook and understand that he knew more so than anybody else what was going on in the world.
Well, let me just clarify. I don't disagree with the premise of what you just said about we're definitely at war. Whether or not we want to acknowledge it and the leaders want to acknowledge it, there's no doubt about that. Okay, there are people that will kill you not because you've done anything to them or their brother was blown up or anything like that. They want to kill you because you don't believe like they do, and they're told that that's acceptable.
We've had actual videos of Christians being beheaded for not converting. We have actual images showing us as ISIS moves through Iraq, they're taking over churches and instituting the jizya, which is the tax on churches that aren't Islamic. We are seeing the rise of the next caliphate, and people need to understand that and react to it and respond to it, knowing that. That changes the dynamics of how we think about these things.
The only thing I would say in terms of Iraq, though, is that, okay, you can have a battle there with a bunch of different sects, and they will, quote-unquote, take care of it themselves. If I'm worried about anything right now, I'm worried about a nuclear-armed Afghanistan with a nuclear-armed Pakistan with India right there. And Afghanistan, if the same thing happens, we pull out and then it's chaos, that's going to be a huge problem, and it's going to make Iraq look like a pimple on a gnat's ass.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So what I'm saying here is that to minimize the damage that's been done, what is the goal? And I have not heard anybody explain it. I don't think that anybody in this administration has the capability of understanding it. And what while I'm worried about this situation, Afghanistan to me and that region is such a huge issue that I know you said you weren't for arming people. I think there's an argument to be made about that because you can have about 4 or 5 different sects go in there and quote unquote take care of business and see who's left standing. And then we can.
Let me modify my position on that just for a minute. You know, I was in the special ops community, so I understand arming people and going in and actually, you know, having advisors like we have 300 advisors going in. These advisors, what they're doing is they're doing intel jobs. They're going in, they're finding people. They're going to do snatches on ringleaders and stuff like that. And then they're also going to arm local militias, train them how to do tactical surges and stuff like that. That's what they're going to do. That's what the advisors are going to do. They're going to train them how to be special ops soldiers, basically, in Iraq. Now, if we have no long withstanding presence after the fact, that's when it becomes an issue. Because when you go out and you train someone who has terrorist tendencies, who may not be a terrorist, but you know, has terrorist tendencies and has an ideology that is very extreme, and you teach them how to be the best killer soldier that you can, you need to be responsible for that afterwards. That's what I'm saying. And I don't think you can do the two things separately. You have to commit to an area if you're going to do that. If you are going to create insurgent forces, you need to stand there and make sure that you can maintain them and control them all the way until they become the natural forces and they become an actual army within that country.
And that's fair. That makes sense.
Let's think about it this way. If you go back to World War II and look at what the area of land that we were dealing with there in Europe and what we did with the Marshall Plan, that was a huge lift. Now think about how large Iraq is, and think about the fact that we also now have to think about Jordan, Syria, Afghanistan, Kuwait, Turkey, all these different places within the Middle East and further Persia and all that. it's a much larger piece of land.
Right.
It's a much larger piece of land with a very different type of people in it, not meaning that they've lived much more so in a tribalistic type of government rule than any other form. And even the dictatorships that they had, the control was to force an example. Most of the things that they still did in their daily lives were the tribalistic, small community things. So it would take a long time for us to be there, gathering these people together and teaching them democracy bit by bit over decades of time. And it's a big lift, and I don't think we have the intellectual leaders or the will as a nation anymore to do it.
We definitely don't have the intellectual. I think as a nation, I think when it's explained and it's explained in our national interest, the American people are going to go along with it, and you have to continuously explain it to them. Even President Bush with Iraq got sidetracked with some things. And just to follow up on your point about the region, you go just a little bit to the west into Syria. Iraq borders Syria. Syria borders Israel. This is a definitely it's a huge problem, and I don't know. I've read it, like I said, I've read a lot on this in the past week, and I have nowhere in my mind where I've come up with what the answer is. It's a freaking mess. But what I'm looking to do now is to hopefully put some pressure by talking about what's going to happen in Afghanistan, and we need to avoid the same fate there, because then that's I would say as equally a big a problem, or maybe even bigger.
Yeah, I think if we walk away from Afghanistan now, we're definitely giving away the game, and it's every man for themselves after that in that region. And it's a powder keg. It's a powder keg that's ready to explode. So there's not a whole lot of good options, and honestly, I don't see us doing anything good until we get a new president and a different type of leader in the world for the world to look to for leadership.
Let's hope. Let's hope in 2016, Aaron, we elect Hillary Clinton and we just do a reset button.
Absolutely, that should take care of it.
Good.
Now, speaking of Hillary Clinton, she's had some bad things happen in the last couple of weeks, and also, of course, different distractions, as you might say, during her time as State Department. These sort of scandals that have occurred throughout the Obama administration, one of them just popped back up this last week, the IRS scandal, in which they were denying C3s and C4s that were conservative. They were keeping them in a limbo state, not denying them, but also not giving them their status. And this last week, we find out that 2 years' worth of Lois Lerner's emails apparently have vanished. And the original excuse that we've been given on that is that a hard drive crashed. A hard drive on her personal computer crashed, causing her to lose 2 years' worth of emails that are specifically in a critical time gap that may have featured emails regarding the targeting of conservative groups that were C3s and C4s. So it's a very interesting thing. One thing to note about this, as was noted on Fox News Sunday this morning, there is a timeline that shows it was 10 days after Republican Dave Camp sent a letter to Lois Lerner in the IRS asking about targeting of conservative groups, that her hard drive suddenly had a catastrophic malfunction and crashed, and 2 years' worth of emails were lost. Now,
completely odd.
Yeah, it's completely odd. It's just strange how it can happen like that. Just wild coincidence. Now, I should state something up front. For 12 years before I started doing this politics stuff, I had a career in IT. I did
IT.
That's called information technology. Information technology.
So you did this stuff.
Yes, I did this stuff for a living.
Yeah.
I spent time in Kosovo, in Iraq, here at Fort Carson, also working for the U.S. Postal Service. I did email exchanges. I set up complete networks from the ground up. I did backup administration. Yes.
I have a feeling, Aaron. I'm going to make a prediction here because I'm world renowned for making predictions. You are going to confirm that the IRS could have absolutely lost all of this stuff?
No, no, that's not the way this works.
IT person that is going to confirm that this actually could have happened, right?
Well, okay, I'll put it this way. There is a chance. I mean, like kind of like the same chance that the guy had in Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance? There is a chance that these emails are actually lost. There is a very slim chance that that is true. Now, it's highly, highly, highly unlikely. The type of regulations. Well, first let's say this: if the IRS were a private corporation, there would be attorneys present right now taking them in cuffs into federal custody, because what they did would be completely 100% illegal. This is kind of the stuff Sarbanes-Oxley, all those things, Enron. This is what they did that got them in trouble. They didn't have the email retention and all this stuff. So these rules have been in place for quite a long time in the private sector. We're talking 10 years at least that they've been in place. Now, for the IRS and for all government agencies, there are data retention policies. There are backups that are taken on a daily and a weekly basis. These are stored off-site in secure locations. I actually said on Twitter when all this first broke that it's possible that these emails were destroyed if a low-level Cincinnati staffer had gone and snuck into a secure storage facility with an EMP device and set it off. Then yeah, these could have been destroyed.
Which Cincinnati is known for their EMP devices just laying around in the street.
Right, it's Ohio, you know. So,
I mean, exactly.
Yeah, that and WKRP. Those are the two things it's known for. EMPs and WKRP.
The only two things Cincinnati's known for.
Right.
I mean, nobody even goes to Reds games. They just know that there's WKRP and there are EMP devices laying around the IRS building so a low-level staffer could do this. I mean, it's just common sense.
Right. I mean, you never know when you need an EMP device to go blow up a bunch of historical archives of email that could get you in trouble.
Exactly.
Now, and see, the funny thing that I think about this is all the Democrats who are rushing out to say, oh, well, Lois Lerner came out and she absolutely demanded that they find these emails and that they recover the hard drive, and why would she do that if she is the one who destroyed it? Well, there's one simple reason: because she had to cover her butt. That's the honest. I mean, why would she do it? Because she has to cover her butt.
Aaron, you are extrapolating right there to motives. I mean, just look, it's simple. A rogue Cincinnati agent basically found an EMP device, accidentally put it in their back pocket, went into this secure location, accidentally left it there, the thing was erased, and then the President of the United States read about it in the paper. I mean, I think it cut and dried. That's it. Tie that bow.
Yeah, there's nothing more to look at here.
Hey, it's like you're Sherlock Holmes, I'm Watson. We just solved this one, puppy. On to the next case.
Yeah, so we're going to unilaterally withdraw from the IRS scandal at this point because, hey.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we solved it.
You know. So it's completely ridiculous. And, you know, I want to say that I was actually proud of a couple people in the hearing who went up against Hoskin. Paul Ryan did a great job, probably one of the best smackdowns I've seen in a long time. He was making his comments, and Hoskin was trying to answer, and Paul Ryan quickly snapped back at him and said, "I'm not asking you a question, I'm making a statement." And basically that was the closest you're going to get to a STFU moment in the U.S. Congress. So I was very appreciative of that. I want to let everybody know we are about an hour into our show, and we are going to go ahead and start wrapping it up here. I want to thank everybody who came and joined us. I saw we had a few viewers online live, and I hope that everybody who comes around and watches the show on the recording enjoys it. Next week we will be back, and like we said, Thomas and I are going to be talking on Wednesday morning this week about all the primary election results from Mississippi and Colorado and anywhere else that they're having primary elections. Make sure to check out Ace of Spades Decision Desk on Tuesday night. They have the best coverage, and they're breaking it before AP, so make sure you step out and go see them as well. LeDuc, do you have anything for the good of the order before we let you go?
Well, Wednesday, 11 a.m. on my show on FTR Radio. Mr. Aaron Gardner here will be talking about Colorado, Mississippi, and then any other trouble that some candidate got in somewhere on Tuesday night.
Awesome. Thanks for coming this weekend, LeDuc. Sorry, everybody, that we couldn't have Caleb here. He is still lost in a farm, from what I understand. He just tried to call me, so hopefully he's not dead or.
Hopefully he's not being taken advantage of by people who make crop circles.
Well, it could be Thad Cochran's farm, so I mean, he may be doing something indecent with farm animals that we don't even know about.
Caleb, oh my God. You believe Thad talking about that? He'll be talking about that Monday night. That'll seal the deal for him.
Yeah, absolutely. In his concession speech, I hope he mentions fondling a young sheep or something. I just want to know what it is that he did that was indecent.
I would love to be at that campaign party, because people will just be taking the beer off the table and just walking out the door.
Yeah, and walking over to McDaniel's party.
Yeah, exactly. I was behind you the whole time, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you once again for joining us at the RedState Weekly Briefing. As always, we're here every week giving you the news from across the web and the conservative activists should be caring about. So join us again next week, and join us in the middle of the week on LeDuc's show. Take care.